Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back or welcome to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. After, well, about a month, to tell you the truth, it's been almost exactly a month. Last time I recorded was on August 15th, and today is September 14th. And so you're talking like right about a month. I'm sorry, but it has been a very busy month. And I mean, it always is. I mean, sometimes I feel like that's just kind of my longstanding excuse, but I mean, but it's the truth. I've been very busy. Not only that, but I mean, I was kind of going through a little bit about the future of the show, and but I'm getting over that now because I've been inspired to keep going, and I'll actually explain that in a little bit. Um, you know, because right now with um just some things just going on with myself, and right now I'm running solo. My co-host, one of my best friends in the world, Dwaylen Davis, Delicious Dwaylen Davis, as some of you know him. He's going through some stuff of his own. Um, he did almost come back about a month and a half or so ago, but unfortunately, when he was going to come back, well, things happened again. But that's just the way life works, and it's unfortunate. But we always say, family comes first, and with Dwaylen, I mean, of course, he has a newborn at home as well, and so we have to make our priorities, and his priorities, just like my priorities, are family. And so here we are, finally, a month later, and I'm able to record. And as you can tell, I still have not got a new camera. If you're watching this on video, um, but I do have new headphones. Actually, I've had these headphones for a while. But first I started using Bluetooth. My other wired headphones started going kaput, so I stopped using those, and I kind of like these a little bit better. The only issue is I can't adjust the volume, um, but as I'm recording, if it's just me, it doesn't really matter about the volume. And so, because I just make sure that everything's working. So that being said, let's go over a little bit about what's happened over the past month in the world of wrestling and my personal life. Actually, you know what? I'll talk first about my personal life to show what exactly has been going on. So one of the things was that I actually got sick. In fact, it wasn't just me; it was everybody in my house. Me, my wife, my son, and my daughter. My daughter actually got sick first, and then she passed on the rest of us because where she works, she's around the public a lot, and she works a customer service job. Well, when she's actually at home, she's actually not home now. She's back at college. I'm going to get into that as well. But she came home and she got us sick, and she was talking about sore throat, everything. We thought maybe it was allergies because the weather around here has been like ridiculously hot. And of course, whenever it rains, the pollen count gets up. And it had rained a couple times, just a couple. Part of the areas around here are actually on a emergency water outage. But we thought maybe it's just allergies. And then I got it. And I'm thinking maybe it's just allergies. And then I got to realize, no, this isn't just allergies. So we never got tested, but it's quite possible we had COVID. It actually knocked me down for about a week, um, where I could barely even speak. I mean, when I did talk, my voice was just cracking and um, everything. Um, and the really bad thing during this time, I actually had a job interview. It was on Zoom, kind of like the way I'm recording now. Well, not actually, I take it back. They didn't use Zoom, but they used a different thing. But it was a video interview, and it was a panel interview. I've never done a panel interview before. Where it's me and then three people who were actually asking me questions all at once. Now I was the only one on video, dude. That was the thing. So they could see me. I couldn't see them. They didn't turn on their cameras. If you ask me, that's much crap. But anyway, so I'm doing that interview, and the recruiter is also on there as well. And as I'm doing it, my voice is just cracking. I'm having to stop and drink some water, and I'm apologizing. And they even said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It happens." And I explained, look, I've been sick the past couple of days, but I'm not gonna. If it was an in-person interview, that's one thing, but this was a video interview. Um, ironically enough, it's actually for a job like on site. So this is not a remote job. I've actually had to start looking for on site jobs, not just remote jobs, because of course we're still homeschooling our son. He's old enough now, he can actually be home by himself, all day. Before that was kind of an issue, but now he's actually old enough he can do it. But this job interview now, of course, I'm waiting, and of course still looking for other jobs. Or a recruiter did tell me I've made it to the next round. However, they've had to delay everything. This is not the first time I've heard this, unfortunately. Uh, over the past, wow, almost a year and a half now since I worked at Charter, I've heard quite a few, everything's been put on hold. I get it. Companies have to do it sometimes. They are budgeting for something, and then all of a sudden something happens and they no longer have the budget. So, um, also during this, my birthday happened late August. And on the day of my birthday, my son and I actually went to a Reds game. It was actually on August 30th. That's my birthday. And we went to the game. It was actually a makeup game from April against the Brewers. And we had bleacher seats because, well, we ain't exactly rich. But the bleacher seats, we've sat them before and they've been fine. This day, the temperature was about 97 degrees. It was blazing hot. And of course, it was the first game of a doubleheader, because remember, this is a makeup game. So that automatically means that, it's going to be a doubleheader. And it was just miserable out there. So I even told my son, I was like, if you need to go back and sit in the shade, go ahead. I said, I'm not going to get mad at you. And so he did. And actually, where he sat was kind of tunnels. Now, the tunnels actually had a little bit of a breeze to them, so that actually worked out pretty well. But yeah, it was blazing hot. I got sunburned. And then my son had his saxophone lesson right after that. And then we had to go to my in-laws' house because it's also my brother-in-law's birthday, same day, just 17 years apart. So we had dinner with them. Um, and a week before that, my wife and my son and my daughter and two of my daughter's friends all went to the Styx and Foreigner and John Waite. John Waite was actually the opening act. Went to that concert at Riverbend in Cincinnati. Had a great time. Uh, you know, I was there mostly to see Styx. The my wife, my daughter, and her friends were there to see Foreigner. My son didn't give two craps. He didn't like any of them, and he went back up, the whole time. But he finally, yes, he actually enjoyed it. Um, and John Waite, if you know anything about John Waite, he's um, it's good to see he's outperforming, but he's not as famous as the other ones. I mean, he had but even though he had a number one song as a solo act, he also had a number one song when he was with Bad English. But his set was pretty short, and he also um started late, and so that's why his. I mean, it wasn't like like Axl Rose kind of late. It was like 10-15 minutes late. And so he did cut his set short. And John Waite, I mean, he played the hits that I just mentioned, Missing You, and then When I See You Smile. And he played a couple of songs, from his first band, The Babies. But I mean, it wasn't a bad set. It was, like I said, it was shortened a little bit from the set list that I'd actually looked up. And it was also different. Even the songs that were same, he played in a different order. But I mean, maybe there were some technical difficulties that maybe that's why he started late. But Styx came out. Styx absolutely killed it. They were the reason I went. You know, Everybody else went there to see Foreigner, and I do like Foreigner. I said I'm not um, dissing on Foreigner at all, but I did go to see Styx. But Foreigner also did great. I've actually reviewed the concert on my other podcast, the Keep Chat podcast. If you want to go check that out. The day after that concert, we helped my daughter move back up to college. And, so I mean, we got home, of course, well after midnight, because we actually went through, I think it was a Taco Bell drive through on the way home just because we were all starving. And we were not wanting to eat at the show because we had to get waters. I mean, it was hot. Like I said, we've been in the middle of a heat wave, and it was just really, really hot. And so we did have to break down and get water. It's like $6 a bottle water. So we couldn't afford to eat there. So we went to the Taco Bell drive-through on the way home because everybody knows Taco Bell is open, for people to go and get the munchies. And but then we had to get up the next morning. Thankfully, her move-in time was not until like 1 o'clock, so we didn't have to get up extremely early. But we helped her move in, and then afterwards, my son suggested, "Hey, let's go over to Petland and just kind of look and see what the dogs they have," because um I almost got a golden retriever puppy, and this is when I'm going to get into the wrestling show. I'll actually discuss that a little bit more, and yes, there is a connection there. And so, okay, we walked into Petland and looked down at the first little QE thing they have there, and there was this golden doodle who is now sitting by my feet. He looked at me and just locked. And if you ever see him, you'll understand why. He pretty much just reeled us in. And so now we have a golden doodle puppy. We've had him now for 3 weeks, and he is rotten, but he just looks at you, and I'll say it, I don't use this word very often, but he's adorable. Cutest puppy ever. So and also on the job front, I have been approved to substitute teach finally by the state of Ohio. And so there was a lot of paperwork involved, and I had to do training. And then the woman who actually did Park County, she was in a bad car wreck, and so everybody got delayed because of that, and I wasn't hearing anything. And so I finally just went by there and sat down. She actually walked me through some of the stuff because there was some other steps I was missing, but I didn't know about it because, like I said, she wasn't there. She was extremely nice, though. She helped me out. And um, good thing I went through that too, because I found out that all the fees for me were waived because I am a veteran. So they really want veterans to help out with the substitute teaching. So, and my first sub job is actually going to be this Wednesday. And yes, I am nervous. I have also decided I'd rather not do kindergartners or first graders, second, third graders, fourth graders, and it kind of depends on what middle school I'm probably going to be fine with. I prefer high school, just because the kids are more mature. Even though I have heard that the high school kids will try you the most, elementary kids won't. They're like the easiest. But the high school, you're in the kids, you're in the class with the kids for about an hour, actually less than an hour, and then all right, go on, go on, go. So you don't have them all day like you will elementary school. And I've also heard middle school is the worst because middle school kids are just mean. But I'll find out on Wednesday because that's when it'll be my first time doing this. So, wrestling news, as far as anything going on with me wrestling wise. Okay. Mentioned almost had a golden retriever puppy. That came about thanks to the Northern Wrestling Federation, the Summer Sizzler show. I know the last time I actually recorded was a few days prior to the Summer Sizzler, which was being held at the Florence Yall Stadium. By the way, great show. Roger Ruffin and crew. I mean, they put on a good quality product. Their first time at that stadium. It honestly makes me want to go watch. It makes me want to go watch a Florence Yall's game now. I've actually heard that that's a lot of fun anyway. And the matches were great. Now where I sat, because they had a booth set up for me. Now the booth, myself and the Dad World Order, the guys from the Dad World Order, we were all kind of with the merchandise booths, which makes sense. I mean, we were part of the sponsors, and well, we decided we're not going to go sit. I mean, we didn't have to stay up where we did, but we decided, yeah, well, we're going to kind of stay here. So our view, I mean, we were definitely not like up by the ring. We were just chilling and relaxing because where we were sitting was almost like a VIP type deal, where like for the baseball games. And so we weren't right up against the ring. and we weren't in the bleachers, you know, like the baseball stadium bleachers. I mean, we were away a little bit, but we could still see everything just fine. The show was still great. Um, got new tag team champions. Well, it's their third time holding it. It's the Hollywood Blondes. Actually, now they're the box office Blondes. That'd be Adam Swayze and Rex. And also the NWF title match was between Pompano Joe, who's been on the show, and Lord Crew, as you can see in this shirt here. Um, really good match as expected. And yeah, it was just a good show overall. But how the puppy comes into play. Okay, so talking to somebody who is part of the Northern Restoration, not a wrestler, okay, but somebody who was actually part of it, just happened to offhand mentioned, hey, would you want a golden retriever puppy? What? Because my wife and I had been talking about getting another golden retriever for a very long time. We used to have a golden retriever, and he was at my in-laws' house, and we were in England, and unfortunately, he passed away right before we came back. But he was like one of the greatest dogs in the world. We absolutely loved him. But we had kind of held off getting another golden retriever because, well, golden retrievers have fur, and they have a lot of fur. Love golden retrievers. This the one thing that draw in the fur is that much. If you've never had a golden retriever, just go and just grab a whole bunch of wigs from somewhere and just throw them in your living room. And that's kind of like what the fur is like when you go to clean it up. I mean, it's just thick and it's all over the place. But golden retrievers are still really good dogs. And so I talked to my wife, talked to my son, and like, yes, it was a rescue dog. I mean, there's a story that goes along with it, but it was going to be a rescue dog. And then it got delayed because of some unfortunate circumstances with the woman who was trying to arrange it. They finally got word back where the people with the dog decided they were not going to give it up. Okay, they did offer a couple other puppies, and we declined. Because they were not golden retrievers, they were pit bulls, and we already have a dog that's aggressive. And the pit bulls, yes, they are how they're raised, but at the same time, if another dog's getting aggressive with them, they will get aggressive back because a dog is still a dog, and they're going to, defend themselves. And our oldest dog, can be rather aggressive at times when it comes to other dogs. But so we ended up getting the golden doodle, but and that was part of it because he's at Archie, our golden doodle now. He is 3/4 poodle and 1/4 golden. And now he just awoke from his nap. I may have to pull him up here to show you on camera. But that was the Summer Sizzler show. Like I said, I mean, it was a fantastic show. And I can't go to as many NWS shows as what I would like and what I used to, um, just because the traveling to the shows, because unless they have a show in Mount Orb, every show, it seems like it's a good 45 minutes away, which is unfortunate, which means it's 45 minutes back. And, and trying to make that drive at, 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, especially when I have to get up early on Sunday morning because of me playing bass for my church's band and I have to be there at 8:30, it kind of hurts. And I've done it, I mean, obviously, but I just can't do it that often. Not only that, but it's like every weekend. If I did that every single Saturday, and I was for a while, and well, my wife was kind of getting a little upset with me because that was the only day of the week I could really spend like all the time with the family, and then of course Sunday afternoons. So I just don't go. Uh, I just don't go very often as much as what I'd like to. I just can't do it. But I do go to like Summer Sizzler. Um, I do go to the shows in Mount Orb, and I do go to some of the other ones when I can. But they're still doing good, obviously. NWF is still, Northern Restoration Federation is still a very high quality company. If you ask me, like some of the top indie companies out there, they're definitely way up there. And you just look at some of the people coming out of there, and also Wildcat Chris Harris actually had a match as well. He's 50. He's my age. I mean, he's just a couple months younger than I am. And I just turned 51, so he turns 50 or 51 in December. Looks phenomenal. But he had a match against James Cross, and it was just a fantastic match, and you could tell the Wildcat, I mean, he's not doing the moves like you'd expect from a 20-year-old, but he's still, I mean, oh, he's still owning it. I mean, he's still doing great. And he just looks phenomenal. I had a picture taken with him. I'm planning on making that picture the thumbnail for this, at least on YouTube. And so you can actually see the picture of me and him. But um I actually want to have that picture made with taken with me and him. And he's such a good dude anyway. I mean, if you actually know him, which I actually do know him, personally, he's on my Facebook, and we do talk occasionally because he's a very busy man. And um well, I found out he actually said some pretty kind words about me to somebody else. Another podcast, actually Duke Loves Wrestling, because Duke actually had him on his show. And then I told Duke, because Duke actually shouted me out on the show. And I told Duke thanks. And I said, yeah, I said, Wildcat, I said, he's, super good dude. I, really like him a lot. And this is like a personal thing. It's not just, oh man, look at he's a great wrestler, so he must be a good person. Doesn't always work out like that. No, Wildcat Chris Harris is a good quality human being, is the way Rescue Randy puts it. And but then Duke told me, he's like, well, he said, um, Wildcat, had some pretty nice things to say about you. He really hopes that your podcast is able to get even bigger. And so I'm like, okay, um, tell me that's not kind of some inspiration where one of the top wrestlers um in the world, pretty big name, is, you know, kind of give me some props. And I was like, okay, now there's my encouragement, because I was thinking about stopping. That kind of pushed me further. So I definitely wanted to get my picture taken with it, because I was going to also text Duke. I told him I would. And Duke's a good dude anyway. I mean, you've seen him on the show. I mean, probably one of the most controversial interviews I've had on the show. Um, but for reasons, and that interview actually got me banned from anything that Bobby Fulton runs, but oh well. Uh, so another show I went to was the one of the other Cincinnati companies. There's a few wrestling companies out of Cincinnati, but one of them called Spot Monkey Promotions. You've heard us mention them on the show before. Have not had any of the people that are associated with Spot Monkey on the podcast, like exclusively with them, like any of the promoters, anything like that. Um, but they it used to be them and the NWF, from what I can tell, didn't really um they didn't have much of a working relationship. That's actually kind of softened some, because Wildcat has actually appeared on Spot Monkey shows now. But the other this past last weekend, in fact a week ago today, they did a show in Williamsburg, Ohio, which is right the town right next to where I live. And so the only other show closer to where I live now are the ones in Mount Orb. Williamsburg is at the high school. Honestly, it's about the same distance to drive from me. So, but this is the third year in a row I've been to the Battle in the Berg is what they call it, and they always have um, a special guest wrestler. Last year it was EC3. The year before, the year before it was Jimmy Hart and Lance Archer. This year it was Shane Douglas, and I've actually been Shane Douglas has been at every fan fest I've been to, because he lives in Pittsburgh, and so it's not hard for him to travel to Chillicothe. But one of the things I mentioned to Big Mama was, I'd like to get Shane Douglas to sign my 10 pounds of gold, because he did technically, he was the champion for not very long. You notice, if you're on video, it's not behind me. It's usually propped up right underneath the big gold. There's a reason why it's not there. I said, well, I said, I asked her, I said, do you think he'll actually sign it? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, he'll sign it. And so this is the actually not the first chance. I missed a couple of other shows, that he was at that were local. One in Georgetown, Ohio, another one in either Peebles or Seaman, Ohio, which is fairly close to here as well. Because of just couldn't make it, wasn't in town, was sick. That's one of the things. I mean, one of the times I was sick. At least one of those. Finally made it to the one in Williamsburg and met him and got him to sign the 10 pounds of gold. Okay, just to show you, here is the 10 pounds of gold. Normally, like I said, it's sitting on that shelf right behind it. For those of you not on YouTube, you just have to take my word for it. There's his signature. And so I now have 5 signatures on this belt from former NWA champions. First was Tommy Wildfire Rich. Next was Dan Severn. Then the Monster Abyss. And then last year, in the very same gymnasium, EC3, who was the at the time the current world champion, the NWA world champion, and now the franchise, Shane Douglas. And that to me is actually really cool. I would like to get more signatures on there, but we'll have to see. But that was a highlight of my weekend last weekend, was actually doing that. And also on the same show, Lord Crew, who is also on my Facebook, his personal Facebook, and then he's just he's just a great dude. I got one of his shirts that I'm wearing right here. And if you kept up with his career, I mean, he's going places. I mean, he just came back from a tour of Japan. And he and I were actually talking about that, just talking about just Japan in general, because of course, I mean, I was stationed there twice, and so I have a lot of fond memories of Japan, and and he really enjoyed it, and so he's just a good dude. I'll be glad to see him, succeed. But I got to rep him on the show. I mean, I just have to, so. And also during the time, and this was not a show that I went to, obviously, because, well, I don't see myself traveling to any other countries anytime soon because, well, that takes money. And that's just something I don't have. But the WWE, they had their Bash in Berlin, which was another, they've been putting on some very good, um, anytime they've been putting on a show over in Europe, it's been great. The fans have been phenomenal. And that's not obviously to disparage American fans, but the fans have just been great over there when they get, because, and I knew this just from living in England for as long as I did, when they get a chant going at a sporting event, oh, I mean, it's going and the whole crowd's into it. But it was another great show. I kind of felt like I was slacking because I didn't do a preview of it, didn't do a review of it. It just kind of happened. Like I said, now I'm getting back into it. There is a possibility that Saturday very well could be the day that I record this. I honestly don't know. So that's really, because I'm kind of discussing the future of the show a little bit, but at the same time, kind of the state of wrestling as I see it right now. Okay, first of all, some wrestling news. WWE SmackDown is now back on the USA Network, and that is in prep. I mean, it was part of the original deal. I mean, it was 5 years, and I didn't even realize it had been 5 years since they royally embarrassed Kofi Kingston on the first SmackDown episode that was on Fox Sports. But it's been 5 years, and so the 5 years is up. They're back on USA, I guess permanently. Raw though is still on USA. Raw is actually going to Netflix. Please hold. Okay. Here's the little guy right here. This is Archie. He's down there trying to eat my feet, and he's being kind of rowdy, so I'm having to grab him. Okay. Look. Hey. Say hi. Archie, stop. Look. No, don't eat the microphone. Don't. But this is Archie. and I have to get him to kind of calm down. But yeah, SmackDown is now back in USA. Now, last night was the first episode that I did not watch it. Maybe I should have. We had some other stuff going on at the house, and I even a rescue Randy even texted me and said, "Hey, I don't know if you're watching or not, but he said the commentating, the announcers, he said, oh, they're on point tonight." And so he was actually coming to, texting me and talking about how good the commentators were doing. And so that says something right there. I mean, I guess it was a pretty good show. Now I have watched the highlights of it. I have watched the ups and downs from What Culture Wrestling, just so I can kind of see what's been pushed. Starting off with a cage match for the undisputed title, interesting, but I also understand it was a way to bring Roman in to make the save, because Roman is, of course, the whole thing about the bloodline. Well, now Roman, he took a break, but now since he's been gone, the bloodline is not what it was when he left. And so now he's trying to get back to that. So he saved Cody, but at the very end of the night, I guess him and Cody actually they formed a partnership, albeit probably temporary, so they can break up the bloodline and get Roman, whatever. So Roman's getting revenge. Cody's helping him, but Roman's helping Cody. And, of course, some of the other things going on. Randy Orton is back now on SmackDown. I guess the whole purpose of him going to Raw was just the match against Gunther, which, don't get me wrong, was a really good match. And that is a money match, um, but just kind of odd to go back and forth. But of course, you have the other stuff, happening with Nia Jax, Bailey, and Tiffy time, and Piper Niven getting squashed in 2 minutes. That seems kind of odd, but then again, maybe it was because the first match just, took too long. But so now Raw, speaking of Raw is shortened to 2 hours until January when it moves to Netflix. Me personally, I think it needs to stay at 2 hours. 3 hours is, especially during the week, is just too long to have a show like that. Especially since you don't have, I mean, if you look at all the action in the ring, and they've gotten a lot better about this, but you look at all the action in the ring, you have 3 hours of airtime, you have about 30 minutes of wrestling. And, I may sound like the old guy, well, back in my day, well, it used to be you'd have an hour show, and out of that hour, you would also have about 40 minutes of wrestling. So 2/3 of that show was actual in the ring action, and now 1/6 of it, and so whatever that is, um it ain't 2/3. Let's see what it is. Let me break out the handy dandy calculator right now. Also about 17% of it. So um and so yeah, drop that back to 2 hours. You could fit the same amount of action in there, no problem. Like I said, I know they've gotten better because a certain promoter who just had a documentary put out about him on Netflix, he used the action in the ring to push the videos, the little storylines, the like the stage plays he wanted to do, where now it's, it should be those vignettes are to push the action in the ring. You go to any indie show, you're not going to have all those videos. You're not going to have the skits. You're not going to have any of that, or if you do, it's very, very, very little. The action in the ring tells the story. And when the wrestlers go to a wrestling school, the action, they're taught how to tell the story in the ring, not, okay, now time for your acting lesson. No, it doesn't work like that. But we're shortening into 2 hours, now it's going to move to Netflix. That's going to be an odd one. Netflix are definitely not the the same company they were when they started. Now, another thing, this is kind of a negative. AEW. Wow. A year ago yesterday, my wife and my son and I went to uh, the AEW Dynamite show in Cincinnati. It was at the Heritage Bank Center. They had everybody, all the crowd, all the audience, all sitting on one side. Yeah, you got to think about it. This is and it's not completely encircled because they do have the stage at the one end, and that's also where um the entrance for the wrestlers when they would come out. I've watched SmackDown there, I've watched Raw there, now I've watched AEW there, and I've also watched the house show, WWE house show there. But they have the one side where the entrance is. Well, of course, they had everybody sitting on the one side. The other side was empty, but that should tell you they couldn't even fill half the arena that night. And this was a year ago. Okay. And there was talk then about how bad their audience participation was, the attendance rate. It's gotten worse. And some people pointed out, well, Tony Khan chose um, Jack Perry over CM Punk. I don't think that might be part of it, but to be honest with you, I don't think that's the only reason. I do think they have a leadership issue. I think Tony Khan, as far as being a leader, may be in over his head, because he has to make those hard decisions, and part of those hard decisions means maybe I look at your executives. Maybe you shouldn't have active wrestlers as also part of your executive team, because WWE caught a lot of flack with when Triple H was he's still the chief operations officer, but he was also putting himself in the ring on occasion. And he didn't do it that often, but it was often enough that it made people mad because well, it may not have been his decision, uh, but putting the world title on him because they were trying to push Roman. They were trying to get Roman over. Well, having beat Triple H, it still didn't work. And now Triple H, Paul Levesque, he can't wrestle anymore anyway. Doctor's orders. I mean, he can't, and he's not going to risk that. He's way too smart. He's not stubborn like some people, Ric Flair. And but having um, oh my lord, I don't know why I just totally blanked. The AEW, the tag team champions, having them and the Young Bucks, having the Young Bucks on there, having Kenny Omega on your executive board, but then putting the belts on them. They're active wrestlers. Of course, they're going to put themselves in the spotlight quite a bit. And it's going to cause a locker room morale to suffer because these guys are, I mean, yes, the whole backstage fight with CM Punk a year ago, it did cause a lot of problems. And then CM Punk got another altercation, and now he's gone, and now he's in WWE. If you know me, yes, I do respect what CM Punk can do in the ring. No, I do not have, I still would never hire CM Punk. He's going to bring you in crowds at first, but at what cost? But that's just you know, um, my take on it. I'm not a wrestling promoter. I'm just merely a wrestling podcaster. And, well, last week, for whenever they had their um, another event, I was sent pictures of this. I have not watched it live. I don't want to watch it live because it just sickens me. Even the pictures, when they stick a syringe inside somebody's mouth, it's one thing to even stick with a syringe anyway, but to stick it in their mouth. All right, Tony Khan. I talked to Paul Heyman and asked him what really became of ECW at the end. Everybody was jumping on ECW, even now. And to be honest, I thought this was kind of strange. When I was watching Shane Douglas, Shane Douglas didn't wrestle, by the way. He was also, but he was a special guest referee for the main event. They turned the main event there into like a street fight, like ECW, because of course Shane Douglas was one of the people who really Because when he threw the belt, and by the way, when I handed him the belt for him to sign, I was like, "Hey, I want you to sign this, but please don't throw it on the ground." He actually laughed a little bit. He said, "I promise." He said, "I'm not going to throw." He said, "Wrestlers promise." He said, "I won't throw it." He was, by the way, he was nice as can be. Um, Take a picture with the belt. Now, if somebody else took the picture, they didn't do a good job taking the picture, and I was trying to get Shane Douglas to actually show the belt. It was at an odd angle, and the person taking the picture, I should have had the actual handler take the picture, not just some random person. I'll take it for you. And he did not did a good job, but I can, anyway, that's the reason I'm not going to have the picture because it didn't turn out all that great. And you could barely see the belt, um, but anyway, but they turned that match into a street fight because of ECW, and the fans were chanting ECW, ECW, and I'm looking at Randy because Randy was there with me. I'm like, this is so strange that we're sitting at an and they're chanting the name of another promotion. I said, to me, that seems odd, but that also tells you the people who were big about ECW, they were big about the type of product ECW was putting out. It was the hardcore matches. I mean, it was, um, it was very, very violent. Well, now AEW, yes, they're doing like unprotected headshots. There's a reason why WWE banned those. The reason why a lot of companies have banned those. I don't recall seeing any of those in the NWF because Roger Ruffin is really smart when it comes to things like that. Um, but AEW, they're going all out, all in, whatever you want to call it. Yes, that's a pun on purpose, but that's what they're trying to push now is this hardcore style, maybe, but sticking a syringe in a guy's mouth, and you see the pictures with it hanging up because it was actually Justin Treno who texted me the picture, and he's like, "Man, what do you think about this?" And I'm like, "Ooh, I'd rather not." And they're going down a path that people are responding by not showing up because once again they have been having attendance issues even worse. It's been getting slowly worse and worse. But people look at, well, when they go overseas, the attendance is great, but they're an American company, which means they're not going to stay overseas. They're not going to stay in England. They go there once, maybe twice a year, and of course they're going to have huge crowds. But here, the product quality is just it's dwindling, even though they got some really big names there. But the product quality is just dwindling. They're having um, bad morale. That's what you're reading about. These wrestlers who have been leaving there have been all open up and saying, yeah, they're like the locker room atmosphere is horrible because of politics. And, and it's going to suffer. And not only that, but this is the economy right now. If you can't afford, well, if you're really having to watch every penny right now, because of the way the economy is, you are going to be more selective about what you spend your money on. People will pay money to go watch a WWE show because now the quality of that has actually picked up quite a bit ever since, somebody got ousted and, is no longer even affiliated with the company. But the quality is actually high right now. AEW is low and people know it. So people are not going to pay to go watch, this kind of just garbage. And tonight is, they're going to have the tapings from 2 nights ago on Thursday. They did the tapings for, is it Rampage that they show on Saturday night now? It tells you how much I've been out of it. I can't even really keep up with AEW much anymore. Well, they did the tapings at the Nutter Center up at Wright State. My daughter and some friends of hers got free tickets. They weren't the only ones either. There was a lot of people on the campus who got free tickets. And they were given the tickets so they could be fillers because it was going to be it's a TV taping. And I had the email that Avery actually sent me a screenshot. They are going to move them around so they could fill in empty spaces for the TV cameras. And, she sent me the pictures and she's like, man, she's like, even with doing that, she's like, this place is still empty. They couldn't even fill up half of the arena at the Nutter Center. And not that the Nutter Center is small. I mean, it's a pretty decent size place because I've been there. Went there um, last December to watch Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It's a pretty decent sized place. I mean, it's a Division I college basketball arena, and for them to not be able to fill like even sounds like not even a third of it, not even a quarter of it. I mean, it's pretty sad. Um, so it kind of makes me wonder um, what is going to happen to AEW in the next year because if they don't pick it up, they're going to be gone. 5 years ago, when they started as the number two company in the world, and it was not even close. They they jumped everybody. They jumped Ring of Honor. Of course, ironically enough, they own Ring of Honor now. They jumped TNA Impact, and TNA, by the way, they're about to be the number two company, even if AEW doesn't fold. TNA Impact is really pushing it. And by the way, they have an agreement with they must have some kind of deal going on with WWE because some of their wrestlers have been appearing on NXT, like Joe Hendry. Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry, but AEW is just kind of fallen. And my daughter's not a wrestling fan. I mean, she has been to shows. Uh, the last show she went to before this one was actually the Summer Sizzler last year. She and my son went, and they did not have a good time. It wasn't because of the wrestling itself; it was because it was blazing hot inside the Hits Baseball Complex. And we actually left. I've never left any event early because I just don't. I paid money to be there. I'm going to watch the full thing. We left. There was at least one match left, maybe two when we left. So that tells you how it was. But she had not been to a wrestling show since that. And she got these free tickets. She's like, why not? And one of her friends, he actually is a wrestling fan. He had never been to a live show before because of where he lives in Ohio. They just don't have a lot of wrestling there going on. I need to tell him, by the way, dude, you have a few wrestling companies like local in Dayton. But they went, and she said they had a good time watching the show. And then afterwards, they went to Waffle House, and one of the wrestlers, let me so I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. Um, was actually there at the Waffle House. Um, let me look. Let me look. Oh, Nigel McGuinness. Nigel McGuinness was actually at the Waffle House, and we were, my wife and I were texting Avery and say, "Go get an autograph or something." She's like, "No, we don't want to bother him." She's like, and she told us yesterday, yeah, there was already some people who bothered him. He was nice enough, but I mean, the man just wanted to eat, So, um, but yeah, and I'm not going to post the pictures that she sent to me because I mean this is not a dirt sheet podcast. It will never be a dirt sheet podcast. It's not what I'm about. 4 years ago, almost 4.5 years ago now, when I first started this podcast, it was even then it was never going to be a dirt sheet podcast. It was going to be people talking about wrestling, talk about what we would have done different, talking about old school stuff, talking about new stuff. Now it has evolved some. We don't talk about the old school as much. Of course, I've had a couple of co-hosts. Both both guys, obviously good friends of mine. Right now I'm running solo because it's hard to. I mean, and I get it when you have other commitments. I mean, it is hard to devote. Even just one time a week. It's hard to devote that 2 hours a week to doing this, just recording. That's not to mention like any kind of research you're doing. And so I get it. So I don't fault anybody for not being able to to do this, full time with me. Because I mean, if you look, I'm even having a hard time doing it full time. But yeah, like I said, this is not a dirt sheet podcast. So I'm not going to post the pictures. I'm not even going to show the pictures that I took last year because I'm like, oh, look, ooh, AEW, because Dwayne and I have both said this many times on the show. I've seen it posted on by people on Twitter, X, on there, on Facebook. I want WWE to succeed. I want AEW to succeed. I want TNA Impact to succeed. I want AAA, CML, New Japan, All Japan, um, all the companies in Europe, anywhere. I want them all to succeed. I want the indie companies to succeed. I am a wrestling fan. This is not a zero-sum game. To have one company succeed doesn't mean the other company has to fail. That's what I loved about the territory days. Yes, are they competing? Sure, especially when you have the companies that are geographically close to each other. They are competing. They're competing for the different wrestlers to have on their roster, but at the same time, they cooperated. And this tribalism that has started to kick in because I've never heard anybody in a WWE show go WWE, WWE. But you'll see that at an AEW show. You would see it at an ECW show. Don't really recall seeing it at a WCW show because there used to be it was more about the wrestling, but the wrestling and the wrestlers. But maybe that tribalism is what's hurting AEW. And I just really hope they can pull the nose up before they crash because it's really, really sad. And that's coming from my daughter, who was not a wrestling fan. She got free tickets and she knew it would be entertaining. But she said it was, and she said she was even telling me the action in the ring was kind of, eh. And yes, her not being a wrestling fan, somebody may say, well, is she really a good judge of that? She's been to enough wrestling shows and she's watched enough of it on TV, enough pay-per-views with me because I mean, she actually, when she does watch it, she enjoys it. So she can tell the good from the bad. But she said it did not really, it was just, eh. And, and so that's unfortunately how I'm going to end this because that's my latest wrestling news. Hopefully everybody's out there doing well. Thank you for tuning in. I apologize for being a month, since I've recorded. Like I said, things going to happen. Um, job situation might be looking up. Either way, I'm going to be subbing and, you know, helping some kids out best I can. And, as the days go by, I'm going to be looking for more ways to do this. There still may be some changes in coming to show. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not, just because I mean I still have some decisions to make about direction, but until then, if you want to email me any of your own suggestions, just send it to armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can find the show on Facebook, you can find the show on Instagram. Just look for the Armchair Booking Podcast. You can find the show on Twitter at Booking Armchair. You can find the show on TikTok. Don't even bother going there because I have not posted a new video there in something like 3 years. I'm just not a super user of TikTok. But, obviously you can find the show on YouTube. Go check out my other show, The Cubicle Chat, where I talk about things that are not wrestling. And, wow, I just had a total just brain lapse. But until we can actually meet again, my friends, yeah, definitely send me some feedback. Give me some ideas. If you want to come on the show as a fan, let me know when we can discuss things. I've had fans on here before, discuss why they are fans of wrestling, but I don't mind having fans on as long as um, I am very selective about who I have on, but I kind of vet that because I don't want um, uh, some people are just better than others. I'll just leave it at that. And it needs to be a good conversation. So, but until I can actually do this again, my friends, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Hit like, share, subscribe. Give me a review. If you do give me a review, I'll read it on the next episode or whenever I see it. But until we can actually speak to you, my friends, hope everybody has a good day. God bless.